Hi, this is CJ with CompRCC.com. So now it's time to put together drive shafts. At first look, you would think that they've given you a bunch of spare drive shaft parts. What they've actually done is given you 2 female and 3 different male size drive shaft components. And that gives you a lot of flexibility because you could take this and use either of those or the smaller one. So that gives you a bunch of different length combinations. I suspect that the reason they did it this way is because the shock absorbers are going to provide the maximum and minimum travel at each corner. The length of the stroke and its total length is going to be the determining factor. Also, the shocks have a spacer. That spacer could be cut down in size, so you could potentially change the amount of travel this is going to have. The directions don't specify which is the default size to use, so I think what I'm going to do is go with large and medium to start, and then if I have chosen wrong or need to make a change, I can do that later. Now, I'm not going to put together both of them. I'm just going to do one for your viewing pleasure, and it's going to be exactly the same for the second one, so it's not worth making you watch twice. Before you can attach these to the shafts, these pieces, if you see the little teeth coming off of there, you probably will not be able to see down inside of here, maybe depending on how the light hits it. There are holes for these, so they are going to go in and they slide in and lock in place, and then there's a screw that goes in here. You're going to need a long 2mm driver. You're not going to be able to do this with a standard Allen wrench, so make sure that you do have a 2mm driver, because the reason you have to do this first is because this little ring is going to slide on, and that is going to, if you see the hole here and there's one on the other side, that is for the pin for the CV style joint. So you have to assemble the joints first, and then you can screw these onto the drive shaft pieces. So let's start by getting this thoroughly lubricated. I'm using this flathead screwdriver to get some oil into this slot where the pin is going to go. And I'm going to take a nice big blob and drop that into the bottom there. Anything I am not doing an overkill on this, I'll be able to remove that. It'll all just wipe right off. Just wipe a little extra there onto my fingers. And then I'm going to coat this little barrel. Now, the way to assemble these, if you've never done this type of CV before, is put the hole straight up and down and slide that through. Okay, now that that's through and pointing up and down, I find it's best to use a pair of needle nose pliers for this. If you have very small fingers, you might be able to do it otherwise, but I'll start the pin. Is that the right size pin? No, I've got several pins here. Okay. You start the pin into the hole, and then I lower this into place with the slot pointed at it, and then you just slide it right on in. And there, as you can see, the pin is even at either side, and there we have our nice joint. Sometimes you have to hunt around with it a little bit, but that is generally the way you do it. And then that little retainer ring, that they make an aftermarket one of these, or excuse me, they make an upgrade piece that has the Axial logo on it, and it's anodized aluminum. All this does is keep that little pin from sliding out. I can't imagine that there's any reason you would ever want to upgrade this part. It would be purely aesthetics. That little ring is more than strong enough, even though it's flimsy plastic, to keep that little pin from escaping. There's no force on that pin trying to make it come out. So unless you are upgrading to a completely different aftermarket drive shaft where all of these parts are metal, and there are multiple options out there by different manufacturers, don't even consider swapping out these little rings. It's simply unnecessary. Okay, now that that is been wiped off, slide that in. Take one of these screws. This is not a self-tapper. These thread into the bottom of these. Now, they recommend thread locker, and normally I'm a big fan of thread locker. If you've watched my videos, metal on metal, use some thread locker, but this thing is going to get a lot of water and sand and stuff in it. There's more than enough opportunities for this screw to become a permanent resident. Also, it's going to be compressing the plastic at the end here. I think I would rather run the risk of it coming loose on me than put thread locker on this thing and never be able to get it apart, because that could very easily happen. Now you got some grease on here. Use a towel and just snug that, get that nice and tight. And I just don't see thread locker being necessary for that. So now I am going to do exactly this same process for this end, and then you slide these together, and then you do the next set. The one other thing you need to know about is there is a little mark here, and there is also a little mark here. Now there's one at either side at 12 and 6 o'clock. You just need to make sure when you put your drive shafts together that you have those two of those marks, either two, 180-degree option, 50-50 chance, getting it right, and in you go. That's all there is to it. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video, and I'm going to assemble the rest of these joints just like I did the first one.